fans of tea drinking, welcome back and welcome to this WRC8 force feedback setting video. Yes, I know how to entertain. I've had quite a few people asking me what my force feedback settings were, why I've set things up how they have, and what I think of the force feedback in WRC8. So in this video, I'm going to go through the settings, going to tell you what I'm using, and hopefully if you use them, that makes the game better for you. Let's go. Right, so first things first, I'm just going to go to the options page, to the controls, and to the settings here. We've got our wheel selected. You want to make sure you've got your wheel selected. So there we go. We've got the wheel and we've got our settings here. Now, first setting on the screen, you've got the max wheel angle setting. This doesn't actually seem to do anything at the moment. If I set this to 200 or I set it to 900, it doesn't seem to change anything. I don't know if that's because it's broken on my end or if it's just broken in the game or if it only works for gamepads or something. But that didn't really do anything. So I thought I'd just tell you guys in case you're wondering what's going on with that, because I don't know. But in terms of the force feedback settings, I really didn't have to change that much with the game, to be honest. We've got the overall force set to 100. We've got the self-aligning torque set to 100. We've got the tyre load set to 20, self-centre set to 30, and re-centre force set to 100. Really, what's weird with this as well is you've got these explanations on the right-hand side of each option. And they're like, so for tyre load, transmits the force applied to the pneumatic spring compression of the front of the vehicle directly via the resistance of the steering wheel. I don't know if they just mean dampening with that or not. It's not like other simulators in terms of what these explain and what you sort of intuitively expect them to do. So when I went to set these up, all I did is I just kept going to the stage, I'd change the setting and then go back and see what it did. If you're setting up force feedback for yourself, I highly recommend just setting one thing to 100, everything else to 0, and just see what each individual thing does, and then go back, try them all out, then go back and then try one with another one on a bit, and just see if you get something that you like, or get. What I tend to do is I set the force feedback up to get as much information from the simulator as possible, just by going forwards and backwards. And this is just what I got to. Now, underneath the actual force feedback effect settings here, we've got the vibration, which does come through the actual force feedback motor, and I have to say they're kind of a little bit artificial in this, but these are the settings I've got. I've reduced the overall vibration down to 60. We've got tyre slip on 90, suspension on 109, ground surface on 10. I've turned the engine off because that just feels really weird. Collisions on 60, but you know, I never crash, so I could just put that on 1000, it wouldn't make any difference. And then we've got throttle and brake on 0, effectively turned off. These, as I said, basically just vibrations and kind of just give you more of a sense that you're actually riding over a bumpy surface. They don't really help you with controlling the vehicle at all, unlike the settings above them. I would say though, the tyre slip is quite nice on the tarmac stages when you're going through a continued corner and the car's under load. The tyre slip vibration does kind of give a little bit of feel of that feel that you get when they're in a real car, where the tyre carcass starts vibrating a bit if you really push it. Maybe not in a realistic way, but it just adds to the immersion. I find that enjoyable. It gives me a sense that I'm taking a corner quickly and pushing the car to its limits. The suspension is nice to have up because when you're going over a big bump, or you know, like jumping over something then landing, it gives you a little bit of a knock and stuff, or magnifies that kind of aspect of it. Again, more immersion than functionality. I'm playing these for fun rather than pure realism. So outside of that, on my wheel settings, now I am using a Fanatec DD wheel. I'm using the Fanatec F1 podium wheel, which is basically the Fanatec DD1 in terms of the internals, but obviously with PlayStation 4 support. On the wheel itself, I'm running here. Let's get the camera on the wheel so you can see clearly. We'll make use of the beautiful OLED display. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. Wheel webcam. This is an innovation. It looks like the boat is moving in that view. Relativity, the miracle of physics. So in terms of wheel settings, we're running sensitivity is on 370, so that's the wheel sensitivity. Now I run with rally games way too sensitive of steering input. I just find it makes them easier to drive and more fun and more snappy, and I tend to not move the wheel as much. if you're a normal person and not weird, you'll probably want to increase the sensitivity, or basically turn the sensitivity up, which decreases the sensitivity in the game. Most people with this game will probably want to be running around about 540, but I've found about 370 is good for me. I mean, you might want to try either, see what you think. So I've got the sensitivity on 370. We've got the force feedback I'm running at 51. So that's basically the motor's at half strength, if that, because just because of the nature of the game. Rally cars, contrary to a lot of people seem to think, oh, cars, insane force feedback, rallies are so violent, the force feedback's insane. Modern rally cars, the force feedback through the steering column isn't that crazy. There's videos of the rally drivers pulling the wheels off the car by accident or it breaking and them driving with their hand on the steering column, which you obviously couldn't do if the rally car was putting out 20 newton meters of torque through the steering column. Obviously, when they crash and the big things happen, there's jolts and things. But it's really, in a real rally car, it's kind of up to how they set the car up and how sensitive, if it's got power steering or anything, how strong the driver wants it. So I tend to put my force feedback on, I've got it on like 50 here. If you want it stronger, turn it up. But if you're being more realistic, you probably actually want it a little bit lower with a rally car. 50 for me is a good compromise between having the detail of what the car's doing and conveying the effects and having the steering self-aligned to correct the back of the car, but not so strong that the wheels actually actively making it harder to drive. So I get the immersion, I get some degree of realism from the car, from the steering movement, but it also doesn't tire me out. So it's the best of all worlds, these settings, for me personally. Different people will like different things. Shock and vibration, I've just got that on 100. ABS is on 80. These settings are mostly for other games, so it doesn't really make a difference. Force effect, I mean, these have been ignored, so you don't really need to use them. But mine's on 100. Spring effect, again, that's off. Dampener effect, I've actually got off on this in this case. Natural dampener, I've got on 10. Little bit of dampening, you probably will actually want a little bit of dampening, and most people will probably want a little bit more dampening than what I use. I really quite like the steering to be very loose. Again, I find it less tiring. Realism wise, you probably actually want a little bit more dampening than what I'm using. It will settle the steering down a little bit, and it will also stop you from accidentally overturning the wheel. It'll also stop the wheel being overactive. So you might want a little bit more dampening. I like to use on the Fanatec DD, at least, I like to use the natural dampener. If you're not using a DD wheel and using a CSL Elite, then you might just want to put a tiny bit of the other dampening on. If you're using like a T300 or a Logitech G29, 27, 25, then you won't want to use any dampening at all. Just don't use dampening on those wheels. TSPC Racer, again, probably don't want to use any dampening. Natural friction, I've got off. Brake forces for my brake pedal, I think I've got that at 40. I have it super sensitive with the rally car. I'm using a load cell. Force feedback intensity, FEI, sorry. This is like a high pass filter, so I put this on 90 with most games using this Fanatec DD, and what that does is it cuts off the really high frequency vibration force feedback, which can feel a little bit unnatural. It's almost like sort of tinny force feedback, if you will, that you typically wouldn't feel through a normal car steering wheel. 90, I find, removes that really high frequency noise and just gives you the really nice force feedback. So that's what I end up using. But that's really it in terms of the wheel setup, in terms of what I've got there. Ultimately, as I say, force feedback is a highly subjective thing. Well, I mean, getting as much detail as possible from the simulator isn't subjective. I mean, there's always going to be an amount of a setting with a given simulator that gives you more or less information. That's outside of realism. But if you like your force feedback to be strong or soft or active or unactive or dampened or not dampened, is a kind of subjective thing. And at the end of the day, if you're using like a DD wheel, there's a lot of leeway where you can set things up and still get tons of information from the game that you're playing, along with using whatever sort of dampening or subjective settings you use, and it's still been really good to drive. Just to reiterate though, if you're using a T300, G29 or G25 or those sort of wheels, you really do want to stay away from dampening as much as possible, and you probably have to. Well, these settings will probably work okay, but you probably want to turn this sort of stuff off because the vibrations will probably start overwhelming the wheel or muting these effects. But with the DD, you can pretty much do whatever you want. But there you go. I mean, that pretty much explains the force feedback settings and wheel settings that I'm using with WRC8. I'm not claiming they're the best force feedback settings. It's just what I've been using, and it's just what I've been enjoying the game with. The game feels fine to me. It's not the physics aren't the best, the force feedback aren't the best, but it's a very fun game to play. The single player is great, and the rally stage is absolutely beautiful, and the cars generally drive like cars. So that's. Deal with it, haters of WRC8. Yeah, so I mean, I hope this video helped you. It probably did. It's probably driven you to mild despair. But a good cure for mild despair is a cup of tea, clicking the subscribe button, clicking the like button, and leaving a comment. Let us know what force feedback settings you are using and what you think works really well. I might give them a go. They might be better than what I've set. But until the next one, guys, thank you for watching this delightful video. Goodbye.